My name is Kimberly Erskine. Welcome to my new YouTube channel, Confessions of a Deaf Girl. The goal of this YouTube channel is for me to share with you my experiences as a deaf girl living in a hearing world. When I was 2, my parents noticed that I was not responding to them when they would call my name, and I also was not responding to other environmental sounds, such as loud noises, banging on pots and pans, music, television, or any other noise that was happening around the house. Everyone told my parents that I was just going through a phase and that I was playing a game with them by ignoring them. However, my mom knew that something was radically wrong, so she took me to a hearing doctor that diagnosed me with progressive hearing loss. Progressive hearing loss means that your hearing will decrease rapidly over time. However, the doctors could not know how soon I would lose all of my hearing. At the time, my hearing was already pretty bad though, so I was fitted with my first pair of hearing aids when I was only 3 years old. I have always lived in a hearing world, mainly because that is the only world I have ever known. As a child, I knew that deaf people use sign language to communicate. However, I did not know that they had their own unique community or their own deaf culture. I chose to live in a hearing world simply because that is the world that I was most familiar with and the one that I knew the most about. I have always attended public schools without any kind of special education, IEP, or any special services. When my parents tried to register me for kindergarten, the Board of Education tried to force me into taking special education courses. However, my mom fought against the Board of Education on the grounds that I simply did not need any kind of extra assistance or special education classes during that time. My ears didn't work, but my brain worked fine. It was difficult, but my mom never gave up, and eventually she won her argument. However, the school said that they wanted to check in on me every couple of months to reevaluate whether I needed any additional assistance. They also recommended that I take speech therapy classes. I was already attending speech therapy at Cooper University Hospital, so this was not a big deal for me. I attended speech therapy through school until about 6th grade when my teacher told me that I was no longer improving. I simply could not hear the difference between the different sounds like SH and CH. It didn't make sense for me to continue with speech education when I couldn't hear the difference between sounds and was not getting any better anymore. When I was in kindergarten, my speech therapy teacher, Mrs. Smells, offered to teach me sign language. However, I refused. I want to make it very clear that this has always been my decision and not my parents or anyone else's. The reason I did not want to learn sign language, even from a young age, is because it did not make sense for me to require everybody in my family and everybody I knew to learn a whole new language. I am only one person, and everybody that I know is hearing and does not speak sign language fluently. To me, it was, even from a young age, it always made more sense for me to adapt to the hearing world with everybody I knew, rather than to have the entire world around me adapt to my one-person unique needs. I know that this is a very controversial view, and that many people, especially those in a capital D deaf community, would not agree with my views. However, I am not saying that my views were right or wrong. This is just where I am coming from and why I decided to choose to be a member of the hearing world predominantly, rather than to adapt to deaf culture. I learned to adapt to the hearing world in school by always sitting front and center in a classroom, reading and writing everything that was written on the board, asking my classmates for help with notes whenever I missed anything, and also teaching myself to become an expert in reading lips of both my teachers and classmates. In 2nd and 3rd grade, I used a device in classrooms called an FM audio trainer. The FM audio trainer came with 2 different parts. The part that I wore had a transmitter that attached to my hearing aids and allowed me to hear what the teacher was saying. The second part is the one that was worn by my teacher, which included a transmitter attached to a microphone. When the teacher would speak directly into the microphone, it would travel directly into my ears and make things louder. To say that I hated the FM audio trainer would probably be the biggest understatement of my life. I absolutely detested that thing. It was big, bulky, and ugly. My classmates didn't understand what it was. They didn't make fun of it, they just were confused as to why I had it. And quite frankly, I didn't always know why I had it. It was meant to amplify sound, but honestly, it wasn't much better than my hearing aids alone. However, it was extremely inconvenient. Most of the time, I had the same teacher for my classes, which was fine. However, whenever I had a substitute teacher or had to change teachers for art, gym, or another subject, it meant I had to hand over the FM audio trainer to somebody new. In the case of a substitute teacher, they would have no idea what the FM audio trainer was, and I would have to explain to them how to use it, which would delay class time and have all of my classmates look at me like I had 3 eyes. After 3rd grade, I decided enough already with the FM audio trainer, and I stopped using it and decided to just use my hearing aids alone and see how I could get by without the FM audio trainer. My hearing aid types changed many times over the years, but they were almost always behind the ears or BTE hearing aids. Of all the brands that I had, the one that I remember the most was Phonak. Phonak was the most reliable, and I remember them as being the ones that broke the least. I did try in-the-ear hearing aids before. I liked that they were more discreet and that I didn't have to have the thing hanging over the side, like how my Cochlears are now. However, I hated the fact that they never worked for me. I felt like I was in my audiologist's office or a hearing aid repair center more often than not when I had the in-the-ear hearing aids. Eventually, it got to the point where my audiologist said, "Hey, these hearing aids are working fine. It's not them, it's you. You just can't hear. You need the behind-the-ear hearing aids because they're much more powerful than these in-the-ear hearing aids will be." From then on, I just stuck with my BTEs. While the BTEs helped me to get by in the hearing world, I spent most of my life chasing for the next best hearing aid. I would quickly grow out of the ones that I had, and my hearing would continue to decrease to the point that even the BTEs were no longer powerful enough. The last model of hearing aids I remember having was a model by Miracle Ear. At the time, I was getting all my hearing aids through Miracle Ear since I have benefited from the Miracle Ear Foundation from the time that I was 17. However, the last set of hearing aids I got were extremely disappointed. I was told that they would be very beneficial to me, that they were the revolutionary digital hearing aids and much better than the ones that I had before. However, the day that I got my new hearing aids, I went home and cried because they were no better than the ones I had before. Sound was not louder for me. I could not hear speech. Nothing has changed, and the promises I received about these new hearing aids were unfounded. Needless to say, when another new Miracle Ear hearing aid came out less than 2 years later, I was skeptical. I was once again told that these new hearing aids were going to be amazing. They were going to be revolutionary, and they would allow me to hear like I never heard before. However, they came at an extremely high price tag of approximately $4,000 for a pair, none of which would be covered by insurance. Also, at this time I was 24, so I have since graduated from the Miracle Ear Foundation program and was not eligible for financial assistance. I wanted to hear, that's all I wanted, but at the same time I could not afford to hear the way that I wanted to. And I wasn't sure that even if I came up with the $4,000 from the GoFundMe page that I created, that it would do any good. I have already been burnt by promises in the past that I would be able to hear phenomenally with these new hearing aids, only to find out that it was just a lie. In September of 2014, I made an appointment to have the tubes replaced on my hearing aids at the Miracle Ear in Turnersville. Now this was significant because I always went to the Miracle Ear in Cherry Hill before. At the time, I was working for a digital marketing agency in Mount Laurel, so I could easily go to the Cherry Hill office after I finished work and be there within a matter of minutes. However, at the time, my office was relocated to Camden, and I was working from home until the move was finalized. This meant that the Turnersville location was closer to my Washington Township home. I was hesitant at first to go to the Turnersville location because it would mean seeing a new audiologist that I have not seen before. I had a really good relationship with my current audiologist in Cherry Hill, Mindy. It is extremely difficult to find a good audiologist and to develop a strong relationship with your audiologist. So once you have one, you probably don't want to change them. But still, I knew it was just tubing that I needed. Not a big deal, just a minor little repair that I got routinely every month. So I figured seeing a new audiologist probably wouldn't be a big deal. My visit to Cherry at the Turnersville Miracle Ear was quick and easy. She gave me the tubing that I needed for my hearing aids after I explained to her that unlike most patients, I needed it once a month, 2 at the very most, because I got a lot of moisture in my ears that would make my tubes get hard and shrink and make it difficult for me to hear. I thought that we were going to be on our way and able to shop around Walmart or get home or, just leave pretty quick and pretty easy. But as we were on our way out of the office, my mom stopped and said, "Sherry, can I ask you a question?" The question was, "Sherry, what do you think about the new Miracle Ear hearing aids that Kimberly is saving up for?" At first, Sherry didn't answer this question. She just made this face. And then my mom said, "That right there, that is the answer. That tells me everything that I need to know about these hearing aids." Cherry then explained, "It's not that the hearing aids are bad or that they don't work. It's just that they won't work for Kimberly. They can't work for Kimberly because she has profound hearing loss. The only thing that will work is cochlear implants. Have you given them a thought?" That's brain surgery. Why would we consider cochlear implants? We were always told that they were dangerous, and she wouldn't be a candidate anyway. You have to have your line completely flat on that chart, and she still can hear, right? That was basically what our reaction was when Cherry suggested cochlear implants. For years, audiologists, including those at the Miracle Ear Foundation, have told us that cochlear implants were very dangerous and not a good solution. However, Cherry knew the truth, and she shared with us the truth that day. She told my mom and I to go home, do our homework, do some research on cochlear implants, and let her know what we thought when we came back. So, that night, my mom and I launched our own little research study. My mom looked mainly at medical articles. She wanted to see what the pros and cons of cochlear implants were. What were the benefits? Were there any risk? What were the medical journals and the medical professionals saying about cochlear implants? I, however, had a different approach. I didn't care what physicians said about cochlear implants. I didn't care what audiologists said or doctors. It's not that I didn't think that they were intelligent, because I know that most of them are. It's just that for years I have been lied about with cochlear implants, hearing aids, etc. from people who had no idea what it was like to have hearing loss. People who could hear perfectly fine and were never going to need any of these devices, and therefore didn't know what my experience was truly like. I wanted to go straight to the source of people who did know what it was like to have hearing loss, people who did have cochlear implants, and see what they felt about cochlear implants. So what I did with my research is I went to Facebook and Instagram and looked for tags, hashtags, cochlear implant, or any kind of post about cochlear implants. The two most important sources I found were both on Facebook. There was the Facebook group Cochlear Implant Experiences and Cochlear Implants Are Us. I'll link to both of these groups in my description of this video so that you can check them out if you would like to. I asked dozens and dozens and dozens, possibly even hundreds of questions in these Facebook groups, and no one ever got tired of answering me or helping me. They were so excited that I was looking into having cochlear implants because they themselves have been through the experience already. They knew exactly what I was going through. The thing that struck out the most to me is that I never met anybody who said that they regretted the cochlear implant. The only thing that people said they regretted was that they didn't get cochlear implants sooner. They were very excited about their cochlear implant because they felt that it gave them their life back. And in some cases, it gave them a life that they never dreamed of having. One that was just amazing to be able to hear anything they wanted to hear and do things they never dreamed of. I knew from that moment on that cochlear implants were meant for me. I prayed about it, and I really believed that God was leading me to receive cochlear implants. From that day on, everything just fell into place very quickly and very easily. I had doctor's appointment after doctor's appointment, and unlike any other time in my life, I was able to schedule the doctor's appointment with ease. There was hardly any wait. It was just a matter of days. Each day, the question was, where am I going now? Which doctor's appointment is today? It all happened so quickly, with the family doctor first, and then getting scheduled to see an ENT, meeting with Jefferson Health, and seeing my surgeon, Dr. Wilcox. And the moment I met Dr. Wilcox, I knew that is who I wanted to do my surgery. He was so confident, and he promised me that this was going to work. When I told him I wanted about 30% of my hearing back, he laughed and said that that would be considered a failure, even though to me 30% hearing was a significant gain because at that moment I had pretty much no hearing. On November 17th, 2014, I received my first cochlear implant. It is recommended to do both of them at the same time, especially for children ages 5 and under. However, I decided to just do one at a time because while I was very confident in Dr. Wilcox and his abilities, I still was scared, and I wanted to see how the first one went before I went and did them both, so that if there was any issues or it didn't work or I didn't like it, I would still have one unimplanted ear to fall back on. Receiving my first cochlear implant was definitely a process. I didn't hear everything right away. Most of those cochlear implant activation videos that you see on YouTube are not entirely accurate because nobody really hears everything all at once, or at least not the way that they're supposed to. It takes a long time for your brain to relearn all of those sounds and to learn how to process everything. I listened to music constantly, and it sounded absolutely terrible for the first couple of weeks. But I forced myself to listen to it anyway, and each day it got a little bit better until it sounded great. And I still remember the first time I heard a bass in a Good Charlotte song, which I could never hear before, and how exciting that was, and it still practically makes me tear up to think about that moment. That was really a eureka moment for me, and when I knew that these cochlear implants were better than anything I could ever imagine. My mom also worked with me by reading word lists to me and having me repeat the words back. When I got bored of that, I tried other programs, such as Angel Sound, which was created by Advanced Bionic to help you to train your newly implanted ears. I will link to that in the description of this video as well, for those of you who may be in this going through this process right now, looking for a rehab. While it was definitely a process for me to relearn sounds and to train my brain to hear the sounds that I was listening to, I did make progress pretty quickly, and after 2 months I was able to go to the movies without the need of caption glasses or any kind of captioning, and I could hear every single word and understand the movie plot perfectly. I was also able to speak on the phone for the first time 2 months after receiving my first cochlear implant. At this time, my speech recognition tested for about 93%. That was a huge accomplishment because before getting my cochlear implants, I was lucky if I got one word right on the speech recognition test. And honestly, if I did get that one word right, it was more or less just a lucky guess because honestly, here's a little secret for those of you who want to pass or get even just one word right in your next speech test. The words are always the same. You're always going to have hot dog, you're always going to have cat, you're always going to have ball on there. So just keep spitting out those words and you're sure to get one of them right eventually. And if all else fails, just say the 50,000 times and eventually the audiologist will get bored of you and make the test end. Because the word the is never going to be on the test. I know, trust me. I received my second cochlear implant almost exactly a year after my first, on November 30th, 2015. Now, with my second cochlear implant, in a way, it was actually more challenging than the first. Because with my first one, after I was implanted, I compared everything to my unimplanted ear. Therefore, everything was new, exciting, and amazing. The second ear, however, I was comparing to my first cochlear implant. So when I didn't reach everything as quickly as I wanted to, I got a little frustrated. Right now, my left ear is pretty much the same as my right ear, but my left ear is always going to be dominant in my favorite ear because that's the one I did first. I can still hear perfectly fine if I only have my right processor on and not my left, but I still do notice a difference of not having the left one on. But I don't regret anything. I'm happy to be bilateral. There is still a huge difference between having cochlear implants and hearing aids, and I can't believe it took me this long to get cochlear implants because it has just been amazing. But God is faithful. His timing is always perfect, and I know that He had a purpose for me in waiting 24 and 25 years to receive my cochlear implants. So where am I now? Okay, so now I'm 30. It's been a couple years since I received bilateral cochlear implants, and these things are still just so amazing. They have given me so many new opportunities. For example, I finished my master's program at Rowan University in 2018, and during that time I was teaching college courses. I was a college professor. That still amazes me that I not only was able to teach, but I was able to teach at a college level. Because in the past, I never wanted to be a teacher, not that I didn't want to teach, but because I thought I couldn't. Because I couldn't hear my students if they would answer me, ask any questions. It just did not seem like something that I would ever be able to do. And now I have taught several classes, hundreds of students. I'm not currently teaching, but the reason I'm not teaching is because I work full-time for Penn Medicine as a web content coordinator, and I'm actually going to school at Liberty University online for the PhD in communication program. So that's not too bad for a deaf kid, right? You go from having your school tell you need special education in kindergarten, which you don't need, to becoming a doctor in the next couple of years. I'll be graduating with my doctorate degree, Lord willing, in the fall of 2022. And then my goal is to teach full-time. I currently wear Advanced Bionics Nadia Q90 cochlear implants. One of them is Caribbean blue, and one of them is silver. I wanted my second one to be red or a more exciting color, but they stopped making the red one when I went to get implanted with these. I am, however, looking into upgrading to the new Marvel Sky, and if I do go through with upgrading to the new Marvel Sky, one of them will definitely be red, and one of them will be purple. I'm extremely excited about the new upgrade opportunity. However, I'm struggling a bit with my insurance. my insurance isn't covering as much as I thought that they were going to cover, and it's going to cost me several $1,000s if I decide to go through with it. So I might wait a little bit, and I'm still deciding what I want to do with that. But I will keep you posted if I do upgrade, and I'll create some new videos based on the new features and let you guys know how I like it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that this was informative and helpful for those of you who might be considering cochlear implants. Feel free to send me any questions in the comments below about anything that comes to mind with cochlear implants, anything that you're unsure of. I'll also link to my blog, confessionsofadeafgirl.com, in the comments, and also my social media channels. So be sure to check those out. Read my blog post and follow me on social media. I look forward to connecting with you all. Thank you. Bye.